players ultimately was a deciding factor for me. Their potential hasn't fully bottomed out yet as far as I'd be concerned, and for me the ultimate easy thing to do was to say yes to Tipperary, 100%. The rapport I've built up with the Waterford senior hurlers over the last 2 years is just something that Mikey and I just couldn't walk away from yet anyway until we're fully sure. I'm not the first Tipperary man to say no to the Tipperary senior hurling job. Time will be the judge of whether or not this decision has been right or not.
So, Liam, thanks for having us. It's good to be here. It's good to talk to you. Obviously, we have a lot to get into when it comes to you and Waterford and your future with the county. But maybe just with the dust having settled, a couple of weeks having passed, how have you been feeling your time?
Yeah, I've been working for a change, Nigel. No, I've been busy. Sure, the club scene is up and running now in Waterford and in every county, obviously. So the weekends have been busy, and I've a lot of work as well. My own professional life outside of Waterford hurling and GAA is quite busy, and it's good to be able to get to focus on that as well during this off season, as we'll call it.
Yeah. Liam, when I was last speaking to you, it was in the press room in Croke Park after the defeat to Limerick in the All-Ireland semi-final. At that stage you were unsure about your future as Waterford manager. Why have you decided to commit now for 2022?
Yeah, well, I suppose, Tomas, in the aftermath of the semi-final, I wouldn't maybe say I was unsure, but I needed to talk to everybody that's involved in our setup and our what we have going in Waterford, and that's from the key stakeholders, which are the county board, right down to the backroom team and management and backroom team and obviously players as well. So always in the aftermath of defeat, it's always a kind of a nervy or a raw place, as I call it, to be. So it's always maybe best not to commit too much at a point in time. But for me, my 2 years were up, and dialogue needed to have happened before I could be happy to, not happy, but before everybody would be content again to roll on. So so thankfully that's what has happened, and we're back in Waterford again for 2022.
What convinced you to commit for another 12 months, Liam?
I think ultimately the players, Tomas. The players ultimately was the deciding factor for me, and plus the support I get from the county board as well. I know I've stated that already, and I suppose I ultimately feel with these group of players that their potential hasn't ultimately, in my opinion and Mikey Beavan's opinion and the management team in general, their potential hasn't fully bottomed out yet as far as I'd be concerned, and I'd be hopeful that there's a little bit more to find in these boys, and they really give us everything and have given us everything over the last 2 years, and they were a very hard bunch of players to walk away from. Yeah,
you said that exact phrase, Liam, in Croke Park after that All-Ireland semi-final, that would be very hard to walk away from. Why have these players made such a big impression on both you and Mikey Beavans over the past 2 seasons?
Ultimately, the respect they give us, Tomas, is incredible from day one. When we made difficult decisions, both starting out and through the 2 years we've worked together, these players, be they starting players coming in, extended panel members, they've treated myself, Mikey and Stephen and Tom and Stephen Malumphey before that, and all the backroom team with the utmost respect, and that's something you don't come across too often. There's usually, in a team environment, there's usually one or two in there that you can't always, I won't say keep happy, but will challenge you, and maybe not challenge you for the right reasons. And I know you're not going to keep 35, 36, 7 players happy all the time, but these players love feedback and they love trying to improve, and I think as I said, that's something that you don't get too often in a setup across the board. And every night we ask these fellas, and every day we ask them to commit to training, commit to their lifestyle, commit to the way they prepare and their nutrition, and ultimately then on match day to commit to the tackle and to commit to everything we're about in a game plan. And when you ask players to do that and commit to that level, it's very hard to walk away and break the commitment. And I'm not in the business of talking out of both sides of my mouth when it comes to when it comes to commitment and honesty and respect. So I felt that was the ultimate decision, Tomas, when it came to going back to try and improve these players for 2022.
Yeah, there was a lot of speculation, Liam, once Liam Sheedy stepped away as Tipperary boss. You were being touted as the front runner to replace him. What can you tell us about the discussions you had between yourself and the Tipperary County Board in the weeks that followed?
Yeah, Tomas, look, that discussion was in private, to be honest, and that's where it'll always remain with me. But, you know, obviously the rumour mill for a role of the magnitude of the Tipperary senior hurling manager can gather legs, and but I can genuinely say that it wasn't anything that the Tip County Board did or didn't say, or it wasn't anything that Liam Cahill or Mikey Beavens did or didn't say. Ultimately it was the drawback to the Waterford players, the Waterford senior hurlers, that really, you know, nailed down our decision. You know, yes, we were torn between, you could say, I suppose, two groups of players, be it the younger brigade in Tipperary, but being that from the Tipperary side. But for me, the rapport I've built up with the Waterford senior hurlers over the last 2 years is just something that Mikey and I just couldn't walk away from yet anyway, until we're fully sure.
Not to dwell on the point, Liam, when it comes to Tipperary, because this conversation is to be about Waterford, but can you tell me maybe a bit about the reaction in Tipperary? You know, you do live here and you talk to people from here, and I don't doubt there'd be a concern about a negative reaction to you staying with Waterford, but like the reaction that you've experienced from whether it be people locally or in general, like, was there a reaction?
Sure, look, you know, as I said, Nigel, in my statement, you know, in the aftermath of making the decision that it would please some and not others, and that's exactly as it has been. Like, for me, the ultimate easy thing to do was to say yes to Tipperary 100%. Like, it's you know, now when I find myself in the position I'm in as a manager at inter-county level, my desire, you know, to manage your own county is always there. But you know, like, you know, if I'm, again, to be as honest as I can, I'm not the first Tipperary man to say no to the Tipperary senior hurling job. Like, maybe people are not aware of that. I know for certain a lot more high profile and a lot more bigger names than me in Tipperary have been asked to take on Tipperary in the past and have said no, but it doesn't have seemed to create the same I suppose disappointment in Tipperary people. So that I won't say it bothers me, but people should be aware of that, you know. And people say that, you know, that the tip job mightn't come around again and I mightn't be asked, and that's you know, that's okay where I am at the moment in my headspace and where I'm at. If that's not to be, it's not to be, but it won't ever stop me from putting my hand up to get involved with Tipperary games development or underage hurling in Tipperary in the future. Like, I don't do them kind of grudge matches, if you want to call it that. So so look, you know, I've unfortunately been at a funeral or two over the last couple of weeks, and I've met a lot of people that have wished me luck as well, and a lot of my local club people here and have expressed their good wishes as well in the continuing in the role in Waterford. And yes, I've met one or two as well have expressed their disappointment, but they've expressed it in a really respectful way, and they're entitled to that, 100% entitled to that. So you know, but look, ultimately time will be the judge, Nigel. Time will be the judge of whether or not this decision has been right or not.
Have you any experience of the reaction in Waterford? Now, again, not living in the city, or, you know, it might be hard to gauge when you do, you know, it's just down for training and you're spending your time here. But have you had any sense of the reaction in Waterford for your appointment as to what it means to people in the county, positive or negative?
You know, I'm sure there's the same reaction in Waterford. Some are very happy, some may not be. But all I can say, Nigel, is from being down at the start of the club championship in Waterford, trying to get to as many matches and grades as possible. You know, and you sneak into them matches and sneak away again. And you meet a certain amount of people. Obviously, you have to when you're going to games like that. But for me, I suppose the one thing that sticks in my mind coming back up the road each weekend is that there's a great buzz about Waterford hurling at the moment at every grade. The matches are ferociously competitive. The crowds are back, obviously, and the standard of refereeing is great. The game has been let flow. There's some right good physical games of late, and there's a real good feel to going to club matches in Waterford, and hopefully that will continue, and that's maybe a positive, that there's a bit of consistency now and a bit of I suppose continuity to myself staying on as manager and building again towards 2022.
I want to leave Tomas back in, but a quick one on that is, as you mentioned, just the positivity around the buzz around hurling. You surely, I know you're a fairly modest character, but you surely must recognise the massive part that you and Mikey and the rest of the backroom team have had to create that positivity, because Waterford hurling was in a fairly low place before that, and to get to Croke Park, to have the year you did and the year that's passed again, you've probably the biggest part to play in creating that buzz of hurling in the county once again. That surely hasn't been lost on you.
No, absolutely not. But again, Nigel, to me, it's down to the players implementing what we do. I wouldn't be here, or the atmosphere around Waterford wouldn't be where it is, ultimately only for the players that carry out them performances on the field to create that excitement. And from day one, when myself and Mikey, even Stephen Frampton got involved, we committed to making sure that we'd have a Waterford team every day to go out representing their people well. And now, I'm not saying that never happened before in the past, no doubts about that. Waterford have always come with flair and competitiveness to every game they've ever played, ever before Liam Cahill came to Waterford. But we committed to having a bit of a cutting edge about us and changing up maybe the way Waterford style of hurling would have been played in years previous. So I think that's beginning to come to fruition now. I think the players are beginning to take it on board. But don't forget, it's been a tough 2 years in a lot of ways, both for players and management and supporters, because of COVID, and especially from a player's perspective, trying to work with new management and trying to implement all them things I've said already takes time. So I am, and Mikey and the management team are really looking forward to a full season this year, where we can really get in and improve current players and absolutely 100% find new additions to our panel for 2022.
You mentioned in your statement, Liam, that you and Mikey Beavens have unfinished business with this group. Is silverware now the target for 2022 at Waterford?
Ultimately, Tomas, I've said it from the start, if our term finishes in Waterford without silverware, to me it'll be classed as failure. And that's where I believe these players are capable of delivering. I know pundits in certain areas and fellas with big opinions will think that this Waterford team aren't capable of dining at the top table. That's been said, but I think we're up there. We're up there as the top 3 or 4 teams in the country at the moment, and it's like anything, you have to keep knocking on the door at the top table to break through, and that's exactly what we're going to do with these players. And silverware will be the gauge, Tomas. You're 100% right in saying that, and this year is a big year for these players. It's a big year for me and the management team, and ultimately there'll be no stone left unturned to make sure that silverware is delivered this year of some sort. Yeah.
A month has gone by now since that defeat to Limerick in Croke Park. Liam, how do you reflect on that game now?
Yeah, that was a game that for 20 minutes Waterford looked incredibly competitive. It was a ding-dong battle from where I was standing. After the water break, I could visually see that we starting to wane quite a bit in our energy levels. Not necessarily all out physically, but mentally we looked to be just making wrong decisions, and left a couple of chances behind us as well. At that level you need to be converting, and but ultimately our decision making again on the big day let us down, and that's something that doesn't sit well with me, and especially Mikey, who coaches these guys and is training them every night to improve in that area. And I know he was really disappointed after the match, not necessarily getting beaten, but really disappointed with some of the more experienced players, how their decision making on the day kind of elapsed and left them. And that's something that can obviously be fixed, but it's something that these players will really need to improve on if we're going to deliver on our commitment to try and bring silverware back to Waterford.
Will there be any changes to your backroom team, Liam, for next season?
There will for sure, Tomas. Yeah, I'm disappointed to say that Tomas Feeney Tom Feeney has stepped away from our management team. Tom, and we're really sorry to lose Tom, because he was a brilliant addition there for the period of time he worked with us, and I know the players really enjoyed his input and really found his input really beneficial. He's I knew from day one that he was a perfect fit for us. I said that. Tom is he brings everything, as I said, he brought as a player. He's 100% committed. But Tom has often spoken to me and to the players that everybody goes on their own journey, and Tomas has things he needs to do for 2022, and Tom is going to do that, and that's the way Tom was as a player. He was 100% committed, and if Tom makes up something in his mind, he does it, and Waterford hurling is important to him, but we're not going to put pressure on him to let that stand in its way. So we will be adding a new selector to the management team over the next couple of weeks, and we're going to make equally sure that we have the right fit for that role as well, and there's plenty of good men in Waterford that are capable of stepping into that role.
Speaking of changing the backroom team, when it comes to the actual team, Liam, we've obviously seen Pádraig Mahoney back in the field in recent weeks. Tyke the Burke due to come back from injury, again, long-term injuries to two guys. In terms of the team and how you can play and, positive changes you can make, to have two players of that calibre coming back in to be involved, it must be a bit of a boost to you when you're trying to make plans now for the long term, but also to see Pádraig Mahoney taking the field for Ballygunner, having been out for so long. And I know you were down that weekend to see what can you take from seeing players like that reintroduced now to a team where you're always looking for players to battle for jerseys and to put pressure on. Can you get two better players to do that?
Well, it's testament to the players in question, Nigel, to show their resilience to come back from let's call it serious injuries, and they're amazing men, and I knew that from watching them from afar before I got involved as manager of the Waterford senior hurling team. They're really top men, and I wouldn't have liaised much with these guys since they got injured. They were very much left to their own devices, but they're totally committed to getting themselves right as they can to hopefully win back their place on the Waterford senior hurling team. So, and that's a massive positive for me. But but I've been really encouraged as well throughout the early stages of the club championship as to the quality of younger player that's out there, and that's something that excites me a lot. There's quite a number of players that I've seen in the early stages, and quite a number of the under 20s as well from this year that narrowly failed to Tipperary and Thurles, that if they commit and if they really buy into being what to being what a Waterford senior hurler is about and come into our environment, I think it will be a great reward to them, and it will be a great addition to the panel for 2022.
Not to take away from players who are involved, but would have to ask you, has there been any conversation with Stephen O'Keefe since your reappointment now? Because I know Stephen initially was taking a year out, and then there was maybe a bit of confusion had Stephen retired. But just to wonder, have you spoken to him? Has there been a conversation about coming back?
No, I haven't spoken to Stephen. I'm watching him with his club, obviously Ballygunner, and he's looking fit and well in the goal, and continues to show all the attributes he did as the Waterford senior goalie for many numbers of years. But I think Stephen is well aware that the door is always open for him in Waterford, and I'm sure he has my number as well if he wants to contact me.
I'm sure he does.
Liam, wanted to ask you about the role of Mayor Ferner. You spoke about it a little bit after the Galway game, and with crowds coming back now, it's going to be more and more difficult to communicate with players, and also the fact that the water breaks will probably be going as well. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah,
Tomas, that's I did express my disappointment with the taking away of the Mayor Ferner role throughout the championship, and they're really relevant points what you've said in relation to the crowds coming back, and the difficulty it is in the modern game to get communication to a player on the field. Now, the know-it-alls and some of these guys that make these decisions in Croke Park and sit around these tables that might have never put a whistle around their neck or a stopwatch in their pocket to prepare a team just don't get what's really involved. when the place is full and the noise levels are really high, and you're there with a split second to try and get a message 30, 40, 50 yards across the field to a player, which could ultimately define his year with all the work he's put in. It might only be a simple instruction. People will say they're inter-county players, they shouldn't need that kind of instruction if they're good enough to play at that level. Every player needs instruction. Every player needs to hear, be it words of encouragement or words of trying to correct their type of play on the day. And I would hope that the GAA would really look at that, because I know it has been abused in the past. There's a lot of mare ferners out there that like to be seen in around the field, and maybe for the wrong reasons as well. Which is always a concern, and I can understand in a lot of ways where the Croke Park and the GAA are coming from. It's a nightmare for referees as well, watching these bodies in and out of the field, and fourth officials maybe getting vocals and verbals from opposition when a mare fern enters the field when he shouldn't, etc. I get all that, but ultimately, it needs to be looked at, and definitely in a break in play. It should be something that should be allowed when there's a break in play, that a mare ferner can get in across the field, do what he has to do and get back out again. But it remains to be seen whether that'll be the case for 2022.
Might stay with the theme of bureaucracy for a second, maybe, since we're onto it, Liam. But just this might be a nonsense point, but has scoring become, I'm talking about point scoring especially, has it become a bit too easy? In the sense that the score lines we see in games are so big at the moment. The amount of points being scored, with Tomas raising the point of the mare Ferna and things that can be brought in to whether improve or ultimately they might disimprove the game. Is there an argument for bringing something in to maybe make it that little bit less easy to score? Because the likes of Limerick, we can see, who can score from range with ease with the tiniest amount of space. 10 years ago that point wasn't going over, and watching Reel in the years recently, one of the top games for Kilkenny, one of the great Kilkenny teams, and in the opening play, Tommy Welch hits the ball from the halfway line and it squeaks over the bar. Now lads are putting them over comfortably. Is there something to be said, whether it be making the ball heavier, or is it that a shot clock is brought in so that you can't find the perfect spot to take your shot, that it's encouraging the play to speed up and things? Is there an argument for something to be done to make it tougher to score?
I really genuinely don't think so, Nigel. I think there's been a lot of tweaks to our game over the last number of years, and I think our game is just fine the way it is. I know I discussed the mare ferner role with Tomas there as well. No, in relation to that, hurling, I've always said, is the fastest field game in the world. And players are getting fitter, faster, stronger, more skillful. Hurleys are now balanced to the exact weight to a player's liking. The slitter, is designed now to hopefully form consistency, and ask any of the goalkeepers or the free takers in any inter-county team, that's vitally important that the slitter is consistent. But it's just where our game has advanced to. That's it. Everything moves on, and hurling has moved on to levels that we wouldn't have foreseen 10 or 15 years ago. And I for one just wouldn't be for tweaking it as it is. I'd be leaving the game as it is, Nigel, because as I said, there was a lot of good games again this year, and what better skill to see than a fella 70, 80 yards from goal with one flick of his wrist putting the ball over the bar. That's what our game is about. I should listen to Tomas when we were driving up. I was thinking of this question. He said he'll tell you no, the no change needed. So I should listen to Tomas all along. Elsewhere, just with things that are possibly bubbling for next year, when it comes to the round robin format possibly coming back, are you for it? Are you against it? Yeah, sure. Look, it was very attractive before COVID. It's demanding, but it's no more demanding than getting beaten in the current format and having to go the detour route to an All-Ireland semi-final or final. So I think for me and this current crop of players in Waterford, I think we like playing matches. We like playing matches regularly, and I think most counties would be of the same opinion. And plus, it'll give lots of good viewing to lots of good supporters around the country as well. If the GAA do go that route for 2022, and full houses, pressure games, home and away, the sooner we can get back to that, the better. A few other small things when it comes to
you obviously look up on the throne at the moment with Limerick and back to back. In terms of closing the gap to Limerick, and maybe not for specifically to yourself, but in general, like there's a lot of counties needed to do a lot of work to close that gap to Limerick. I know Tomas asked you about takeaways from last year, but what? It's a very wide-reaching question. But how do you start closing that gap to Limerick?
Well, you just stay. You have to stay improving. You need a little bit of. I know they say you make your own luck, but you need a few breaks along the way as well. Like we're not in the business in Waterford of crying about injuries and maybe unavailability of players and that, but you need a full complement all the time to take on the best teams. And Limerick have been the benchmark obviously for the last couple of years. Really, they should probably be going for nearly 5 in a row at this stage. And that's not blowing wind in their sails. That's fact. It's up to everyone else to catch them. They set the bar, so it's up to everybody else to try and come to that level. And I suppose they have been fortunate too that they have all their key men fit at the right time, and that's again testament down to the support people around them and how they gauge it and how they make sure they're conditioned properly. But I think for any team to catch Limerick or to get up to that level, they have to concentrate on themselves, and that's what we'll be doing in Waterford for 2022. We'll be just concentrating on ourselves, getting ourselves right, and making sure that we're ready to rock when the time comes.
The other point to that, maybe on the other side of it, is that the chasing pack there they are closing in on the likes of Waterford and Kilkenny and Limerick, and we see the likes of Antrim and Dublin now starting to become a bit more of a force as well. Is that something that you have in the back of your mind that and not to say that you go into a game assuming you're going to win, but games that you have more confidence of winning are a bit more tight nowadays, maybe?
Well, look, every game now is you have to be so ready for every match, and everybody is coming to get you, and that's the way it is. It's when you're in a management role or a coaching role, the uncertainty is always there. That have you the timed right, have you enough done, have you the right men in the right positions, and it's tough going because there's only a puck of a ball, and I know it's an old cliche, but there is only a puck of a ball between the top, right, you have Limerick and then everybody else, there's only a puck of a ball between them, and that's again being genuinely honest. Every day you go, you have to have things work right for you, and if you don't, you're done, and you pay the price.
Maybe my last thing for you is your own biggest takeaway from the year last year. It was a bit of a return to normality in a way. We weren't quite out of COVID and the games were a bit more stilted, but what's your biggest takeaway from this year's championship that we've just had?
That's a great question. I think the biggest takeaway for me is I suppose the resilience of these Waterford players to recover after defeat to Clare in the first round of the championship. A team of lesser quality and lesser resilience would have gone away, and I'm really proud of the way they collectively came together and made a commitment to one another to hang in there and fight to get themselves back into the latter stages of the championship, and that's a big takeaway from me, and I think as well we've unearthed a lot of new young players that came on and onto the panel, and our subs and our impact off the bench in all our matches to date this year has been really good, and that's a really good sign when you can look back out over your shoulder as a manager and know that from 16 up to 26 them 10 players are you can trust them to come in and do a job maybe better than the fella or as good as the fella that's coming off. So they're big takeaways for me, and again it's the scoreboard might have said the same in relation to the Limerick match. It was still 11 points. There was 11 points last December, but I think ultimately there was a little bit of progression again this year, and inter-county hurling, if we can find another little bit of progression again in 2022, we put ourselves nearer to getting back into the last two of the championship, and ultimately that's the goal, and trying to, as Tomas said earlier, win silverware along the way. All right.
Good stuff, Liam. As always, thanks a million. Good to talk to you again. Thanks for having us up.
No problem.
And I suppose lastly, best of luck for the year to come. We'll be talking to you again soon.
Please God. Okay, thanks guys. All the best.
WLR IMRO Local Station of the Year. WLR.